Welcome back to the BHAW Army Wrestling Radio Show. I'm Jordan Tom, followed with Brian Rowan. Tonight we got on Ohio State champ, three-time NCAA qualifier, class of 2019, currently located out of Fayette, Nam. We got on Rocco Caywood. What up, Rock?
What's up, fam? How we doing?
Pretty good. It's weird. We're not too far away right now, but in my head, but you're probably an hour away, just the way Fort Bragg is situated. So big.
Yeah, are you living in the same house in Southern Pines, or did you make a move?
No, I moved. I'm in Pinehurst now. I'm in a condo.
Okay, good deal.
Ready to move up to Pennsylvania.
Right on. What's up in Pennsylvania?
Just where I grew up. So just trying to get closer to family.
Awesome.
Yeah. So busy times, but I got rid of that house about like 6 months ago.
Okay.
But this podcast ain't about me today. This is about you, Rocco. It's nice to have you on the show. We had David Warnick on, who's 93 grad, so many moons ago. So it'd be nice to change it up and talk more recent stuff in this podcast. We haven't had a more newer old grad here in about a month or so. So it'd be nice to reminisce on some of the stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's take it all the way back to the roots where you got the Toyota Ohio hat on. Back to the big OH. You were a state champ, Ironman finalist, stud coming out of high school. And you can shout out Ohio as many times as you want. This is a Ohio sponsored podcast, but talk us through the recruiting process and what made you choose West Point. And we know you also went to USMAPS.
The U.
The U, baby. There it is. Throw it up. Yeah, but shout out to Ohio, greatest state in the union. Gotta love that. So, but yeah, going into the recruiting process. So in high school, I wasn't really like a super big recruit until, or I didn't really get like much notoriety until midway through or right in the beginning of my senior season. So sophomore year, I made it to state, went 1-2. Didn't really hear from many coaches and stuff. And at the time, I didn't really like think too much about wrestling in college. Like I'd been to the state tournament and that was my goal of being a state champ. So I was just like pretty laser focused on that. And I'd been to like college wrestling matches. So I went and watched Ohio State a couple times. My dad took me down there. But I never really like visualized myself wrestling in college until I got later into the later years of high school. So junior year, I was having a pretty good season. Towards the end of the season, I ended up getting like ranked number 1, went into the state tournament, went 0-2. So I was projected to win and then just really had a bad day. And I just couldn't believe like it. That was one of the life-changing moments for me, definitely. So getting past that, the next day I remember going home or watching the finals and watching these guys win state titles that I had beat in the previous season. And from there, I went home the next day and I just like started training, put together a plan. I actually stopped playing football my senior year just to focus on wrestling, kind of specialize. And that's really where I made the biggest jump, is wrestling through that summer where I'd be doing 2 days. And then I would say the recruiting, my recruiting really kicked off when I wrestled in the Super 32. I ended up getting 4th there. And then started like hearing from some D1 coaches. And then at obviously Ironman, like taking 2nd there was huge. That really kicked off my career. I remember Coach Heskett calling me after that, and my phone was just ringing off the hook, and it was a really, really cool time. I feel long-winded talking about this already, but long story short, the season goes on, and I'm just kind of weighing my decision. Midway through the season, I took a visit to West Point, a visit to NC State, and then I had a visit scheduled for Michigan. So those ended up being my top 3. They had come down. Michigan came down, their head coach and their assistant coach, and watched the practice suite, and they came to one of our tournaments locally. Had some good conversations with them. But yeah, Coach Heskett, he really persuaded me, and I just really believed in everything he was saying. He was from Ohio. He had the accolades. He was pretty much like everything I wanted to be, and he was from where I was from. So after the state tournament, I called him and just like let him know, hey, this is where I want to go. West Point.
That was your senior year?
That was my senior year, yeah.
Wow, that was late in the game to be making the decision.
It was super late. He said I was like one of the latest recruits to ever commit because it was like after the state tournament. This is in the spring. You know, you got Beast coming up in July, so it was pretty late in the game for sure.
Yeah, you
Did
finished
you
the state
feel any
tournament in
like
March and probably reported in June.
Yep.
did you feel any like added like did you know you wanted to go to West Point before the state tournament and you just kind of like waited till after it, or like did you feel any added pressure maybe like because you hadn't committed to a school yet and like you hadn't been a state champ and that was your goal?
No, so it was actually kind of the opposite. I went into the state tournament just like laser focused, and I told like all the coaches, I was like, hey, like I just really want to focus on my senior season and end it the right way. I want to focus on winning the state title before I make any big decisions. I was being extremely consistent in my training, my mindset, everything going into it, and I didn't want any like external factors kind of like weighing in on my mind. So I didn't want to like make a decision and then be second guessing myself or something happen and have to worry about that. So that's kind of why I waited so long.
Yeah. To go back to something you said after your junior season, the state tournament experience, you said it was life-changing. In what way? Like your actual life or just your wrestling life? Was it a catalyst to motivate you, or did it actually change your perspective on how you live today?
I would say, yeah, it was definitely a lifestyle change because not that I was making bad decisions in high school at that time, but I definitely became so much more focused and kind of realized like, holy cow, like I could wrestle in college. Like after seeing those guys that I had beaten, like I said before, win those state titles, like right in front of my face, I was just like, no way, like I should be there right now.
Yeah.
And my older kind of like put together focus on what I was doing on the weekends, who I was hanging out with, just pretty much all facets of life.
Nice.
So you moving kind of into the next chapter, you get to prep school. Coach Heskett told you, that's where you want to go. That's why you want to go there. You get the prep school, and then coaching change. Bam! Now you get Coach Ward coming in. Did that change your perception of things? Maybe coming out of CCBT, out of the USMAPS basic training. What was your mindset at that point?
Yeah, so everything was kind of how the whole process of, the coach change and everything kind of was, how do you put it? It was like up in the air. My mom was like, whoa, what's going on? Like me and Coach Heskett were like pretty close. We're both from the same state. I had really bonded with him. Like we had talked about like watching Ohio State football games on the weekend and stuff. Sitting in Chipotle with my buddy. Talked, and he tells me that Coach Heskett has accepted the new position, and so I was really mad. I was like, oh my gosh, like why isn't he telling me this? And I was just mad about the whole situation for like 5 minutes, and I stopped myself and just kind of realized I was like, I got to be extremely thankful right now that wrestling's provided me this opportunity. Without Coach Heskett, like I wouldn't be going to West Point right now. He reached out and recruited me and got me the opportunity to go there. So I can't be mad at all. So I guess that's a little side note. But yeah, so once we're in CCBT or prep school basic training, everything's kind of up in there. We're like me and all the guys are talking amongst ourselves. We're like, oh man, I wonder who this new coach is going to be. And then at the time, Tyler McLeese, so he was the team captain when I was a freshman on the team, and he happened to be doing his leadership detail. So he was a platoon sergeant for my company, and he was giving us all the info on like the whole situation. And he was just like a really good, helpful, like he's the one who like really kind of, him and Tompkins, LT Tompkins were, they showed me the way of BHAW, and they kind of introduced me to that. But Tyler was with us every single day, and he kind of stuck with us, gave us all that information. So I just remember sitting on the back like little computer thing at USMAPS with the guys. Tyler brought us over, and he's like, hey, here's our new coach. It's Coach Ward. He's from Oklahoma State. Gave us a whole rundown. And I was like, well, who are all the other options, And I was all like asking, and I remember they were saying like Ken Chertow and Mark Schultz and all these other like big name guys with all these accolades. And I was like, what? I was like, why would they take this Coach Ward guy? I had never heard of him before, and obviously the other guys had these great accolades, but come to find out, Coach Ward has been like truly just an amazing coach, and I think they totally made the right decision with that. But my perspective at the time, that's kind of how it was. I was like, man, like who is this guy? But right off the get, when you meet the guy and you just hear his coaching philosophy and everything, we really kind of came together, and it was good overall.
So talking about his coaching philosophy, you were there from the beginning. You probably heard some of it when you were at USMAPS during club practices. Talk about, Ryan recently talked to the team captains on the previous episode about just how the culture has changed in the last couple of years. You're even a little further removed. Talk about what you saw from the very beginning to when you graduated.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this too. And, I think Coach Ward, he's always had like the same philosophy, and he's always went off that. I think the biggest change was throughout the years is that the team started to buy in. They started to believe in what he had to say. And and also a big part was Coach Ward eventually became like very understanding of our schedules. Like at first he came in, like any coach would, be hard charging, puts out his philosophy. This is, chasing greatness. This is what we're going to do. And once he really started figuring out like the life of a West Point cadet, he really kind of tailored just the whole program and wrapped his philosophy or interjected his philosophy within that. And it turned out to be a really good experience. But the culture evolving, I feel like when we went there, the standard wasn't to have like 10 NCAA qualifiers or anything like that. It was like, yeah, let's try to get guys. But when, Coach Ward came in, or at least like the start of what I heard from Coach Ward, it's like, hey, that's our expectation, is we want 10 people in the NCAA tournament. We want 10 All-Americans, 10 national champions. And if that's not your goal, then, why are you doing it? So that was a big thing. And then another thing that I thought was pretty cool and pretty important, I totally agree with this, is that you didn't have to wait to become the starter. His expectation was that you come in as a freshman. It doesn't matter if you're a freshman or a senior. Like, he wanted those freshmen to come in and just be scratching and clawing for that starting position. That was my mindset coming in as well. So that just fit right in.
This wasn't one of the questions that we prepared for, but you kind of came there at the beginning of Ward transitioning in and learning about BHAW. Did you know about BHAW coming out of high school, getting recruited by Coach Heskett, and like how did BHAW kind of start from your perspective, kind of being interjected in a few years after it was created, but also when a new coach comes in? Can you talk to us a little about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So BHAW is freaking awesome. Hell yeah, I love BHAW. That got introduced to me by Ryan Tompkins. So he's Captain Tompkins now, just killing it out there, old aviator. Got to get him on the show. He's a great mind to hear from. But yeah, I just remember one of the first prep school practices. So at the time, the 2014 or the team captain of that year would go and be the USMAPS coach. So he ended up being my coach at the prep school. So I remember that first day of our mass athletics for prep school basic training or whatever, he brought us in and he sat us down and we did our introductions, and he mentioned this BHAW, and we're all like, what is this BHAW? Did you say yeehaw, or are we talking BHAW? So that's kind of how it started. And then he just, every day he told us more and more about it. He brought out the BHAW essay, the official script of it, and told us what it meant and how it was. So we had this like image in our mind. We're like, oh, this is so cool. Like I want to like be a part of it. And I think my first like early stages of seeing like what BHAW was truly about was with, like I said, I mentioned Tyler McLeese earlier in this. He really like took us under his wing during that basic training. Like when I went in there, so a lot of the cadet candidates going in, they watch like all these videos and get themselves prepped and like ready to go and figure out like what the basic training is going to be like. I just showed up like, I'm here, I'm going to wrestle and, go to school and didn't look into any of the military stuff. And then, I got people screaming in my face. I'm like, what is going on right now? But yeah, McLeese, he really just took us under his wing, and great guy. He really showed us what BHAW is all about. So that was my first interaction with BHAW.
Appreciate that. It's funny you mentioned Ryan Tompkins. He so for the listeners in, like we put a post out like pretty much at some point every Monday with the episode that's getting released. But in reality, it gets released at midnight on Sunday night. So you could, if you woke up on Monday morning, it's sitting in your Apple Podcast. And literally, Ryan Tompkins, every Monday morning, he listens to that episode and gives me feedback like on his drive to work. He's so fired up about it. It's awesome.
Ryan's the man.
Gotta give Ryan a shout out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tompkins is a boss. So is Tyler McLeese. I had the fortune of meeting him recently. I saw him the other weekend and gave him a big old bear hug. But talking about bringing somebody under your wing, Bryce Barnes was a dude actually that I had recruited. He was a dude I brought under my wing. A little stat that me and BHAW actually came up with when we were preparing for this was that in the last 11 years, 10 of those years at 197, we had an NCAA qualifier. Bryce was, your predecessor. Talk about, you already talked about coming in and scrapping for that starting position. I know you guys had some battles. Maybe talk about that, your plebe year, because I think you beat him, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. How did that go down?
Yeah, so I remember coming in, and I was, prep school year, that went by. I actually got injured in prep school year, so I didn't really get like a full year of training and stuff. I was actually kind of a little upset going to the prep school. I wanted to come straight in and make an impact right away, but Coach Heskey was like, trust me, like this extra year is going to be so beneficial for you. And I'm so thankful I did that. But anyway, to your question, so I came in and I'm like, just, you walk in, you're scanning the room, like, all right, who are the guys here? I had known he was a 3-time NCAA qualifier at the time, but that didn't matter anything to me. I just came in and I was going to do everything I could to get the starting spot. That's kind of always been my mindset. Like I just never wanted to be, on the bench. I always wanted to be, the guy. I mean, everyone does. That's everyone's goal. And we definitely scrapped it out. In the room, we didn't really wrestle that much. It was kind of like he did his own thing and I was just training and getting the best partners I could on the other side of the room. And it was always in the back of my mind. I knew at some point it was going to happen. And if it didn't, like if I didn't get that opportunity at like a wrestling tournament or something, I was going to demand it from the coach that I got like a wrestle off or something, which that's a whole nother story. I ended up doing that a little bit too. But so everyone scrapped it out in the room and stuff. And I'm just like, I kept asking coach, I kept going to these open tournaments, like having some success. I had a pretty decent record going for, a freshman and felt pretty good about my season. And I'm like, hey coach, like how do I get in this lineup? Like, what do I have to do? And I just kept like hounding coach. I'm like, hey, put me in, coach, And he's like, you need to score more points. Like, I don't think you're there yet. And he's saying all these things and just it's like motivating me. It's just like a fire burning inside. I'm like, I'm all right. I'm just gonna keep wrestling harder. And I remember, I think I can't remember which tournament, like East Stroudsburg Open or something. I think I'd won that or won like 2 tournaments in a row and beat some decent guys. And I'm like, I think I deserve a shot or whatever. And he's like, you need to go out and score more points. And then I remember going to the Nittany Lion Open. And I had some pretty good success there. I ended up making it to the finals. I wrestled Morgan McIntosh in the finals. He ended up beating me pretty good. I think he was ranked 2nd in the country at the time. I did take him down, though. It was legit. But anyway, I scored a bunch of points. I remember going into this tournament, like I had just had a conversation with coach, and I was so fired up. And like I said, he's like, you need to score more points. So I went in there, and I think like the first 2 matches were tech falls or something. And I was just like trying to score as many points as possible and had success there. And I went back to the office. I'm like, hey, what do I got to do next? He's like, oh, you got to keep training this and that. And it was just like this recurring cycle. And then finally he's like, all right, I'm going to put you in the A bracket of the New York State's tournament or whatever. And I was like, oh, hell yeah. I was like, this is my opportunity. I was so pumped. Anyway, the tournament starts. Bryce and I are on the opposite sides of the bracket, and I'm like, all right, like this is my chance, like let's go. And I remember actually, I wrestled pretty horribly in the first like couple matches, but I ended up making it to finals. Bryce made it to the finals, and yeah, we squared off. And I just remember going into that match, and I just felt super confident and kind of came up with a little game plan and just stuck to it and executed, and that's where that happened. Um, yeah, so that's kind of like where we finally met, you know. And after this match, sorry I'm getting super long-winded about this, but after that match, I went into coach's office and I'm like, look, I've done everything you've asked. I just beat him, and I was like, I deserve the spot. And I think Vegas was the next tournament. It was like the next week, and I was, as a freshman, I was like, this is the tournament I've been wanting to go to. It's like one of the biggest tournaments on our schedule. And he's like, nope. He's like, you're not. He's like, I don't think you're ready yet. He's like, you beat him by such a slim margin. He's like, you need more. You need to score more points or something. So Bryce ended up going, and then they came back. And then like the first duel back, he put us in. I got to travel with the team to go to a duel with North Carolina. And right before the duel, he was like, hey, you're wrestling this duel. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I was just so happy. And I was like, finally, I got my opportunity to start. And he sends me out there, and match is going great. I take the kid down. It was Chip Ness from North Carolina. I took him down in the first like 5 seconds, or it was a quick takedown. And I was like, oh, like all hyped up. Anyway, mid-match, I ended up tearing my LCL in my knee. So that kind of put an end to things for the most part. I ended up winning the match, actually, and then just trying to battle back from that injury. I was never the same until the season was over, pretty much. At the end of the season, I was pretty banged up, and I still went into coach's office, and he knew I was banged up pretty bad, and I was like, hey, like, I need this wrestle off. Like, I already beat him. I deserve the spot for EIWAs. And he told me, he was like, you got to beat him. You got to beat him 2 out of 3 times. He only has to beat you once. And I was like, this is the most, I don't know. I was like, this is the most unfair thing. I was feeling freaking, just sorry for myself. I'm like, man. So I went out there, ended up losing the wrestle off, and, my knee was pretty bad at the time, and just, yeah, he beat me. And he ended up having a really good EIWA tournament. I think he got second that year and went on to nationals to be a 4-time qualifier. But that was kind of the story with that. Yeah. Sorry, that's pretty long-winded.
No, appreciate you sharing that. That's the level of detail we need from our guests. So, you're talking about, your kind of rivalry with the team, your play, with him, your plebe year. Talk to us. You had a pretty decent rivalry with, is it Cervantes from Navy?
Cervantes, yeah.
About that rivalry and just wrestling Navy in general.
Yeah, old boy Cervantes. I wrestled that dude 5 different times. I ended up going 5 for 5 against him too, which was awesome because he's from Navy, so you never want to lose to those guys. But my first, the first time I met up with him was actually in the prep school, and that was the work. I beat him. I think I majored him at the prep school. That was probably the best I ever wrestled against him, to be honest. And then I ended up wrestling him in the duel for my sophomore and junior year. And then I also wrestled him at EIWAs both sophomore and junior year. So 5 times total. We had some battles. That dude was one of the strongest dudes I've ever wrestled. You get in on his leg, he grabs your wrist, and when I get in on someone's leg, it's like a dog on a bone. Like I got a pretty good grip on a single leg. This dude could somehow rip my hands apart, and he was really good with that. So I kind of had to get a little crafty and just finish quicker and just make mid-match adjustments that really made the difference in that one. But man, that kid was tough, and loved scrapping with him.
What would you say is more aggressive, a dog on a bone or a rat on a Cheeto?
Dog on a bone.
No way.
Dog on a bone. Come on, you got Skeeter on a bone over there? Come on.
Well, to bring it all full circle, I mean, I think having guys in the room to push you like that probably made you who you were later on in your career. My goodness, I wish that, maybe I would have had somebody that I was chasing after like that with such fervor. But what do you think it's going to take? Like I said, we had 10 qualifiers in the last 11 years. What's it going to take to get somebody over the hump and just slap an AA next to their name?
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. That stat you gave me, I was like 10 for 11. 10 years in a row, or 10 out of the last 11 years. That's pretty crazy. I was trying to come up with something, but honestly, I think it's all down to the individual. And that's from my perspective, obviously. I think, in terms of my career, I think the biggest thing for me was just a mental lapse there. At the end, I felt pretty good about everything going in. It was just in the match. There's a specific moment, like I can think back to the specific moment of my first match at NCAA senior year, and it was just really small, like, mental lapses that really cost me that match, because I had no business losing to that kid. I remember wrestling that kid in like a summer camp, like the year before, or I don't know when it was, like 2 years before or something. And I just, I definitely was way better than that kid and just shouldn't have lost. But yeah, to answer your question, it's, I think it's different for everyone. For me, just a little bit more mental coaching and a little bit more mental, like, practice, I guess.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely moving in the right direction. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
What was your, if you're looking back, what was your most memorable match, or maybe even dual meet of your career?
Okay, so most memorable duel, I would say senior year Army Navy. I feel like that's the pretty, like, cliche answer for everyone who's gonna say, but I mean, it was awesome. I had the whole family there. It's senior year. I won my match. The team absolutely crushed it, and I just remember after the match, it's like a tradition now that we all just bump Nickelback, Rockstar by Nickelback. It's a tradition now. So get all that fun music going and just rock out to it. But yeah, that was probably the most memorable duel for sure. And in terms of my favorite match or my most memorable match, I was trying to think of one, and there's really not like a ton of matches that I'm like super, super proud of. I was like thinking back, I'm like, man, like my high school, like senior, like the state finals match, like I remember that match, and that was probably my most memorable match ever. Just the feeling, I've never had that feeling like ever in my life. It was just amazing. And I just remember wanting that so bad to like replicate that and be an NCAA champion. But, I just didn't get there. So looking back, I really don't have, I really don't have a match that really struck me that I'm super proud about, I guess, or most memorable.
This is great radio right now. Nah, I'm just messing around. So you graduate, you branch engineers, post to Fort Bragg. Cool. Recently graduated Ranger School. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How would you say Army wrestling kind of prepared you to, getting through that course? We have a lot of, cadets or recent grads, listening, maybe some really old grads that maybe are like Ranger School is easy now. But what about Army wrestling prepared you? What made you successful through Ranger School?
Definitely. I mean, the physical stuff is obviously going to be a given, but I would say mentally. So the biggest thing that got to me in Ranger School, if there was one thing that I could put my finger to, I would say it would be the stress of just being like stressed out, like, oh, hey, hey, you're up, you're in leadership today, make it happen. And the one thing that I kind of drew similarities to was how I kind of approached tournaments. I would never really look at the bracket, and I just kind of took everything one match at a time. So I never really liked to know who I was wrestling. I would literally just show up to the mat, and then that guy would show up, and I'd be like, all right, hey, I'm wrestling him. And I didn't like to know anything about my opponents or anything like that. So I kind of took that same mindset into Ranger School, because when you get your look, there's multiple tasks that or graded tasks that they grade you on to whether you get the go or the no-go. So we just took it one task at a time. That was kind of our motto, or my squad's motto. But I just thought of it like that, take it one match at a time, take it one task at a time. So your first task, if you're in like a planning leadership, you give the warning order. And, if that goes horribly and you know that you got a no-go, you can't freak out and just be like, oh, well, I'm screwed for the rest of my patrol. You know, you got to just put that behind you and be like, hey, focus on this next task. And that's the exact thing that Army wrestling prepared me for, is, you know, just taking it one match at a time and being able to focus on that.
Did you go straight through, or did you recycle any of the phases?
Yeah, I recycled good old Darby, and then after that I went straight.
Good stuff.
Well, as we get into the last couple of questions, Rocco, give us some funny stories, either about your time at the academy, whether it's wrestling related or not, or just some stories about the team.
Or call out somebody that we haven't heard from yet from around your time frame.
Okay. I'll start out with Coach Ward. So
you already dogged him about why you didn't want him to be your coach. Is that not enough?
Oh, I know. Hey, I brought it back together, though. He was a great coach. Anyway, yeah, so it's mid-match. I can't remember who we're wrestling, but it's a home duel. And I think it's probably like a 165. They're at like 175 right now. I'm starting to warm up. I'm behind all the bench chairs, just kind of doing my thing. And I think it was the referee was doing something that was really ticking off Coach Ward. And, you know, Coach Ward starts stomping, he's getting all mad, and he ends up behind the chairs that we have set up. And, you know, I'm just like warming up. He gives me a quick little pep talk, and I'm like ready to go, feeling great. And the ref makes this horrendous call, and Coach Ward is behind the chairs, and he sees an open chair, and he tries to jump over the chair. He like steps on it and gets caught in it, and just totally like face plants mid-match. And we were all just like looking, everyone was like dying laughing. We were like, man, that just happened. Because midway through that, he was yelling. He was like, ah, and then it just, you know, ate it. So it's definitely a memorable, fun moment.
Did he try to address the ref after that?
Memorable match right there.
Yeah, there it was.
Did he continue to try to pursue the ref after that, or did he just give up?
Yeah, I think he kind of had a little word with him, but we all just looked around, and that was that.
Dude, Coach Ward can get on these refs. I went down to UNC when they had like the quad. This was probably like 2 or 3 years ago, and like I went the whole day. I went with Jimmy Rafferty. You know, shout out to Jimmy again. Actually, he's mentioned in every podcast.
Yeah, I feel like you do that every time.
We went to like the first 2 matches, and so like there was no fans there, and so it was like most of the fans came to like the later matches, but we went for the whole day, and it was so quiet there. And the only thing you're hearing in these matches, because the couple fans that are there like listening quiet, the only thing you hear is Coach Ward just scream at the refs. And I just started coaching wrestling that year, and here in North Carolina, you can't like yell at the refs. Like you'll get kicked out for just like saying like talking to them. And I'm just thinking to myself, how is he able to talk to the refs like this? And it was like he gets into it. It was awesome.
Oh yeah, he doesn't play around.
Well, I'll tell you what. This was circa 2012. It was probably January, and we went down to Columbia. They had this teeny little gym, and there was maybe like 150 people in there. There wasn't very many. It was literally like a basketball court, and they had put a mat in there with like a couple chairs around it. And you know what's worse than a coach yelling? A dad. And that dad happened to be mine. And not only was he yelling, he was literally sitting. Yeah, Randall was sitting on the bench with the team for some reason. I don't know why. And this ref makes a call during Mike Gorman's match. And Randall, it wasn't even me wrestling. My dad goes out and yells at the ref. He's in the circle, like in the middle, yelling at the ref so hard that his chewing gum falls out of his mouth onto the mat. And he's still yelling at him. And then he's like, that's all. And he just reaches down and picks his gum up and walks off. And the entire place was silent. Flipping hysterical.
Love that energy. That's what it's all about right there.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so another story I got for you guys is with my good buddy Gavin Berkeley. So we're in the mess hall one day at lunch, and multiple times before, he's talked about how this meal, the Korean beef strips that they brought out, he's like, man, I hate this meal, but he was so hungry. He's like, I got to eat something. He's like, it always makes me feel just like weird. I hate this weird platter they bring out. So anyway, he just scarfs down a big old meal and just eats a bunch of it. And later that day, we ended up having like one of the most grueling practices. And the conditioning, you would kind of like hold the buddy, buddy, and run him back and forth on the wrestling mat. Wow, words. And anyway, he's struggling like I'm struggling to talk right now. Anyway, he's running back and forth, and you can just see he's like white as a ghost, whiter than he already is. And all of a sudden, he just turns and just yaks, and it goes all over the mats. And Coach Ward just was like, "Get that!" I don't know what he said exactly, but he just got after him, was like, "Clean that up right now and get out of here," or whatever. I don't know. It was so funny though. Everyone was just dying laughing because he just like yacked, and Coach Ward was yelling at him. Yeah.
Me and him were messaging on Instagram last night. He gave me an idea for a viral video that I'm going to make, and I have to give him all the credit when it goes viral because it's a great idea. I'm not going to tell it right now, but it's going to be epic. And he gave me the advice for it, but he told me to give you a hard time tomorrow on the podcast. So I'm glad you told a story about him.
Yeah. And then the last one will be Christmas dinner. So I don't know how you guys celebrated Christmas dinner at West Point, but it got pretty rowdy when I was there. I distinctly remember our plebe year when I had no idea what the Christmas dinner was all about. And I just remember being there. We ate the dinner, and then you start singing, the song, "A partridge in a pear tree." And anyway, so when that song came on or whatever, when that little verse came on, everyone just turned, grabbed whatever food you could find on the table, and just slung it across the mess hall. And I just remember our whole team was just scooping, mashed potatoes, anything you could grab, and just whipping them across. It was pretty intense. It was a war zone in there. But yeah. That's all I got for funny stories.
That's what you're referring to 12 Days of Christmas.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
That'd be viral.
So before we wrap this up, kind of on a more serious note, what advice would you give cadets or even recruits listening in, that may are on the fence of going to West Point, or maybe on the fence of staying at West Point, especially during now like these crazy COVID times? What advice would you give?
Yeah, definitely for the guys on the team, regardless of what class you are, definitely just, take ownership of your career and just be a professional about it. That's one of the biggest things I learned as I matured throughout. Is just, there's a couple things, a couple key pieces that I feel like really helped my wrestling career and really just helped me in general. And that was consistency in how you train. So everything you do, it should be like you're a robot, like as far as like the regimen of like how you do things, like how you're thinking when you're going into practice, how you're thinking before every single match. You should have that same mindset going in. Another one is communication. So, don't be afraid to knock on coach's door and say, "Hey, I'm feeling this way about something," or I think we should change this, or I want to do this for, my wrestling. Like, what do you think about that? And I feel like a lot of people on the team were just almost like kind of scared, not necessarily scared, but just didn't really extend that or open that door of communication when that was one thing I did. And I think it really helped my career and helped me get a lot closer to the coaches. Also, going off that is, your training schedule. So I was a guy that, for some reason, I always got some sort of injury. It was either my knee, my elbow, my shoulder, like something was always happening. So I remember going to Coach Ward and I was like, "Coach, like we got to do something different. Like I keep getting injured every single year." And him and I sat down and we kind of put together a plan and kind of adjusted my training schedule. So rather than doing like a 2 practices a day, that morning practice, I would go to the training room and kind of work on mobility stuff and strengthen the muscles around like certain areas. So just being open with communication and just seeing if you can tailor something towards what works for you, I guess. As far as recruits, like future recruits coming in, there's no other institution that comes close to providing the opportunities that provides you with opportunities like West Point does. You know, you think of your education, it's top notch. You think of job security, it's guaranteed right when you graduate. The network, and specifically like corporate America, once you get done, Brian, I'm sure you can attest to that. And money going in. So if you come from a family that that doesn't have a ton of money, and you're looking for somewhere to go, it's West Point's a great place. It's a full ride. Obviously, you have time to commit, but that's a guaranteed job, and then they also pay you when you go there.
You're literally a professional athlete. They're paying you. You're paying you.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
And then you just got to factor in that final piece of just how honorable it is to go to such a prestigious institution, and being able to actually serve your country and serve a bigger purpose than just wrestling or just just living like the typical life. So all those factored in, West Point's unmatched.
Boom.
There it goes.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, Rocco. You're the man.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
This was fun. It was nice to. I should have probably told you just to come out to Pinehurst, but then our job. But you're also in warfighter right now, doing 12 on, 12 off. So
yeah, long days out here.
Everyone worked out well, and I wasn't going to Vietnam.
All right, man. Well, appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. All right.
Yeah.
See you.
Thanks for tuning in to the BHAW radio show. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. If there's something you'd like to hear on a future show, reach out to us on any of our social media, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Or you can reach us at email, bhaw.radio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and as always, go Army, be Navy.